But here's the chilling part. Even after the exorcism, and to this day, family members report seeing black shadowy figures following them. This suggests that whatever came through the board created a lasting connection that couldn't be easily severed.
The Late Night Legends podcast is meant for a mature audience. Topics covered may be violent or sexual in nature and are not suitable for sensitive listeners. Please be aware of your surroundings. For specific trigger warnings, please see the episode's show notes. Testimony shared by guests of this show are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Late Night Legends hosts or staff. This podcast and any linked materials should not be considered medical or professional advice, nor is the information a substitute for the expertise or treatment from a professional. Listener discretion is advised. Watch out.
Hey everybody, welcome to Late Night Legends. I'm here with Frank, Maria, Joan, and tonight Tim will be telling us about Ouija boards and other scary stuff about them.
Great. So, today we're diving into one of the most controversial and misunderstood tools of spirit communication, the Ouija board. So is there someone there? Does anyone want to speak to us? You know, these are simple phrases that have been whispered by curious seekers, thrill-seeking teenagers, and serious paranormal investigators for over a century. But what exactly happens when we place our fingers on that heart-shaped planchet and ask the questions of the unknown? Are we truly communicating with spirits from beyond the veil, or are we simply falling victim to our own subconscious movements? So today we're going to take you on a journey through the fascinating history, compelling personal experiences, and scientific explanations behind this mysterious board. You know, by the end of our time together, I believe that you'll have a new perspective on whether these boards are genuine portals to another realm or simply just a game. And I do want to warn our viewers up front, some of the stories that I share today will be a little unsettling. People have reported physical manifestations, accurate predictions of future events, and encounters with entities that continued long after the board was put away. And they aren't just campfire tales or urban legends. These are documented experiences from ordinary people whose lives were forever changed by what came through the board. But before we dive deeper, I'm curious, have any of you guys ever used a Ouija board?
Never.
Yes.
Yep.
What were your experiences like?
Well, nothing much happened. It was in the board game room at summer camp. So,
How old were you?
10 or 11.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I was like 8, and it caused a fight with me and all the neighbor kids because we all accused each other of moving the planchette.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I did one in middle school, and it was with me and another girl. We were into supernatural things, as young girls tend to be, as a weird hobby. And we had something write out like kill count, whether it was her or whether it was a ghost, who knows. So that was the spookiest thing. And then everything else is like, who knows? Who knows what's happened?
Wow. Mm-hmm. And Maria never touched one?
No,
or?
The closest I came to one was some friends back in college. They had one and they were playing, and I left the building. I went somewhere else. I don't want to mess with it because I've heard of like actual stories, and I don't know.
Right.
We were actually going to have this topic a long time ago when we had an entirely different crew, and we actually came to like a huge disagreement within the team because we were going to actually play live digitally, like with a screen share, and like half of the team was against it and half of the team really wanted to do it, so we ended up just shelving it entirely.
Oh wow.
Oh, I do that happily.
I think it's something we should do when we get together, more of an in-person kind of thing.
Yeah,
Maria, what do you think?
Yeah.
You
That'd be cool.
I mean,
you want to drive the planchette?
like I'm interested in it. Like I believe in it. I just I don't want to risk anything attaching to me, you know.
That's fair.
What is the logic, Frank, of it working digitally?
Oh, I never said it was going to work. I just said that we were going to fuck around with it.
Okay.
That's all.
because I'm sure Tim will tell us like the philosophy behind the Ouija board and how it works. But I was just like, what? How does that work now? But okay.
I don't know.
I mean, it's a good way to test, right? Test if it's real or not. Because some of those ideologies that they have that say this could be the reasoning behind why people think it works from a subconscious standpoint, you're not able to do if you do it digitally. So who knows? It might be a fun test, actually. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being a complete skeptic and 10 being an absolute believer, where do each of you fall when it comes to Ouija boards?
I'd say I'm pretty close to a 1. So
Wow.
yeah,
I'd say I'm
I didn't have much of experience with it.
I'm going somewhere between 1.5 and 2.
Whoa. I think Maria's higher. That's why she's afraid to do it. So
Yeah.
what did you say, Maria?
Yeah, sorry, Maria, go ahead.
I think I would say like a 6, because I mean there are those cases that like people might be moving it subconsciously, but not just a Ouija board by itself, but like spirit boards in general throughout history. Like there's been multiple types, and yeah, I don't know. There's always something that like if you really conjure up, if you have like your thoughts and like your mindset set on like talking to something, you never know like if you really are like bringing something up. So
Joan?
So like I would say a very cautious 5, because I think for the most part, usually it's people messing with the board, whether they mean to or not. But I'm also a big fan of not inviting anything in. And I feel like sometimes when people use it the wrong way or a weird way, you're just inviting things in. And I don't like that idea.
Right. Well, for
about you,
myself,
Tim?
I'm a 10.
You're 10 out of 10.
I'm 10 out of 10. I mean, I've played with one, multiple times, had a lot of experiences. So that being said, and at the end of my findings here, and I start going through some stories, I'll definitely include mine in the stories, and you'll see why I'm a 10 as I go through that.
I do think it's amazing. Before we get into it, I think it's amazing just as a team how we have people on both sides of the believer spectrum. You know what I mean? Non-believer to believer. I think that's really good, and I think it's really healthy. I think if you're going to do the type of topic and the type of content that we do, if you had everybody who was just all in believers, I don't think it would be as good as we have it, which is like a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's good to have debate too, right? Because then you can talk about, hey, this is why I feel this way. Why don't you, what do you disagree about that? I think debates are good in every aspect.
Yeah, totally agree.
And that's why it's good to have different opinions. All right. Well, let me get started then, because over the next hour, we're going to explore the Ouija board's surprising origins as a commercial product, which was born during America's spiritualist movement. We'll examine the scientific explanations that skeptics offer and why those explanations fall short when confronted with certain experiences. And we'll hear firsthand accounts that will make you question what's possible. And we'll discuss why the Ouija board's reputation shifted so dramatically from an innocent parlor game to a demonic device. So, before we dive into any of the chilling experiences that people have had with the Ouija board, let's take a step back and explore where these mysterious boards came from. And the history might actually surprise you, because the Ouija board wasn't created by occultists or spiritual mediums, but by entrepreneurs who saw a business opportunity. So the Ouija board as we know it today was patented in Baltimore in 1890, right at the height of the America's spiritualist movement. Following the devastating losses of the Civil War, many Americans were desperate to communicate with loved ones that had passed on. Spiritualism, the belief that the dead can communicate with the living, had grown from a fringe belief into a full-blown religious movement. So why do you think that Ouija boards became so popular during times of mass tragedy like the Civil War and World War I and the 1918 influenza pandemic?
Frank, you should know the answer to this, because we've already done a prior episode involving the spiritualism movement. Yeah, Frank. This is a test. Did you know? Tim and I were going to test you.
I was getting tested. I mean, I was just going to say that with a lot of those things, people do claim to see a lot of paranormal things happening, right? And I think that if somebody offers a solution to communicate with someone on the other side, people are going to buy into it. That would be my guess, but I didn't know this was going to be a test of something specific.
Do you remember what episode I'm referring to?
Absolutely not.
The Fox sisters that we covered?
Oh, yeah. Where they're conning people.
Yeah, the height of the spiritualism movement with
was
the
like stomping
Fox
on the floor and
sisters.
all kinds of cool stuff. I do remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty spot on, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is that the two folks who patented and popularized the Ouija board, Charles Kennard and Elijah Bond, weren't spiritualists themselves. They were just businessmen, capitalists who recognized that a board game could do the work of an expensive medium and make twice the profit. So according to research from the Strong Museum, neither man actually believed the board could contact spirits. In fact, the Ouija board was never initially advertised as a tool for spirit communication. It gained this reputation organically through its use in spiritualist circles rather than through the marketing claims. Does anything about that surprise you guys? Did you guys think it was built to actually communicate with spirits?
I don't know. Maybe it's a Mandela effect, but for some reason, a part of me really felt like maybe spirit boards and that kind of thing went back a lot further, and maybe they were like an ancient thing.
I think they do, but I think the Ouija board is
Like specifically Ouija board, not then, but those, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not surprised in the way that we have many things, especially during the spiritual movement, that was like used as one thing, but then moved to another. The other example is dowsing rods and how they're actually used to find water, but now we use them as a tool to communicate with the spirits. So,
does knowing that it was created by businessmen change your opinion on your belief scale?
oh no.
No.
It reinforces it for me. Now I'm
yeah,
at a
I
one.
think so.
You were saying before, Tim, that it's demonic, and what's more demonic than a business?
Yeah, right.
Trying to sell a board.
That's a good answer. Good answer. All right. So the name Ouija itself has been the subject of much speculation. Some claim it combines the French and German words for yes, oui, and ja. Others believe it was the board itself that provided its name when asked what it should be called. Whatever the truth, the name has become synonymous with spirit communication boards worldwide. So the early history of the Ouija board is filled with legal battles and competing claims. Kennard and Bond left the Ouija novelty company shortly after its founding, each creating their own knockoff versions to capitalize on the game's growing popularity. Meanwhile, the trademark for the original Ouija board landed in the hands of William Fuld, who gained a reputation for aggressively defending it against copycats. Fuld routinely claimed to be the inventor and exclusive manufacturer of Ouija boards in his advertisements, though historical records suggest the most likely inventor was actually a cabinet maker named E.C. Reich, who died in 1899 and couldn't defend his claim. By staying out of public debates and steadfastly asserting his own claim, Fuld managed to make Ouija his legacy. Like his predecessors, Fuld wasn't a spiritualist either. When asked by the Baltimore Sun in 1920 if he believed in the Ouija board, Fuld responded, "I should say not. I'm no spiritualist. I'm Presbyterian." This quote comes directly from the Strong's Museum archives, highlighting the fascinating disconnect between the manufacturer's beliefs and the product's spiritual reputation. The Fuld family manufactured Ouija boards from 1898 until 1966, when they sold the rights to Parker Brothers. In a fascinating twist, the year Parker Brothers acquired Ouija, it actually outsold Monopoly, which is really a testament to its enormous cultural impact. Parker Brothers continued the tradition of avoiding explicit spiritual claims in their advertising, focusing instead on the board's ability to answer questions and predict the future. However, they did make a significant concession to the public's perception of Ouija as a way to speak to the dead. In 1941, the Fuld company had introduced a new box design that featured a blue ghost modeled after a 1909 cemetery monument sculpture called Eternal Silence. Parker Brothers kept this spectral imagery and then took over production and moved manufacturing to Salem, Massachusetts, a location with its own rich history of supernatural associations. Today, Hasbro holds the patent for Ouija, and after they acquired it from Parker Brothers, and they have largely distanced themselves from the product. If you search Ouija on the Hasbro website, nothing comes up, despite, or perhaps because of its 130 years of notoriety. Even the most mainstream board game manufacturers seem hesitant to embrace the Ouija board's controversial legacy. But the history of the Ouija board is only part of the story. To truly understand the power and persistence in our culture, we need to examine the experiences people have had with it. Experiences that defy simple explanation and suggest there might be more to this game than its inventors ever imagined. So before we dive deeper into the mysterious experiences, though, let's take a moment to consider the science and what science has to say about the phenomenon. After all, this wouldn't be a serious investigation unless we considered all perspectives, including the skeptical ones. The primary scientific explanation for how Ouija boards work is something called the ideomotor effect, first documented in 1852 and later named by physiologist William Carpenter in 1888. The ideomotor effect describes how we can make subtle unconscious movements without realizing we're doing so. So here's how it works according to scientists. When we place our fingers lightly on the planchette, we have an expectation in our minds that it will move. This expectation, combined with questions that create anticipation for specific answers, causes our muscles to make tiny involuntary movements. These micro movements, especially when combined with similar unconscious movements from other participants, can cause the planchette to glide across the board, seemingly of its own accord. You can actually witness a similar effect with a simple experiment called Chevreul's pendulum. If you hang a small weight like a button or a ring from a string and hold the string out in front of you, trying to keep your arm completely still, the weight will eventually begin to swing in small circles. If you mentally focus on it moving in a particular direction, like clockwise or counterclockwise, it will often begin moving that way, even though you're not consciously moving your hand. So I'm curious right now, if anybody has anything that they could use, would you be willing to try Chevreul's pendulum experiment that I just described?
Don't have any string, but I will say while everybody's looking for string, I did just fact check you on the whole Hasbro thing. You are right. If you go to the website and search for Ouija, doesn't come up, isn't there. But if you go to any other store and you look to buy a board, it does say Hasbro on the box. So you are, I didn't think that was going to be correct, but you are correct,
You
sir.
think I was going to come without fact checking first?
Nah,
Frank?
hey, listen,
Man, I thought I was very
Damn.
thorough in my investigations.
I'm not
This is
saying
a
that. I'm just
presidential
saying,
debate with a live fact checking. Damn.
I was curious because that's so odd that a company that owns the rights to something so lucrative would not advertise. That's
It could be part of the marketing scheme too, though.
Mm.
Like generate an urban legend and then coast on that.
Well, I think it's think
Just
people
as
who-
far as it not appearing on the website, anyway.
I also think people who want a Ouija board know they want one. I
Yeah,
don't think
exactly.
you go
You're-
and you're
you're not-
browsing in the game section going, oh, I should grab that one, right?
Yeah.
You know, and every time I've ever bought one is because I've wanted one. And
trying
a
to
funny
remember- I
side
did-
story, I know we don't like to get sidetracked, but a funny side
good.
story is one of the only things I've ever had stolen off my front porch from like Amazon was a Ouija board. So I really am curious how the person who stole that package felt when they opened it.
They cursed. Would stringed headphones work? Because that's the best I got for you.
Probably.
Okay, so
They should. There's a weight at the end of them, and
yeah. What do we gotta do again?
you
Sorry.
got to stand
Hold
up
it
so
on.
we can see it swing.
yep, stand up, hold it out in front of you, and keep your arms straight, and just hold it there.
Like the whole length of it. Can you see me? I don't know what's happening.
We can.
I don't know if those are going to be heavy enough.
Make the
I was
slack
thinking heavier
shorter.
headphones.
Oh, give me a second.
This is gonna go in
See,
the
I'm in my
blooper reel at some point.
sweatpants. It's supposed to be looking nice. Okay, hold on.
At least you got pants on.
Was I not supposed to wear pants
I'm just
today?
kidding, Maria. I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's why I couldn't stand up.
Stop moving.
Oh, they're swinging.
Well,
They're already moving.
They're
They're
not,
swinging.
Yeah, I can't make them not swing. Stop.
Oh, they're swinging again.
Well, you know what? This is not science.
I
Anyway.
thought that's the point, though. The point is that you can't have it just
no,
be.
the point is I can't get them to not swing to start with.
No, I think Tim, isn't that the point that you can't get them to stop when you start?
Well, they have to.
No, the point is that they just start swinging more aggressively because your
Yeah.
hand subconsciously starts to move it, right?
Yeah.
So
So they can't start swinging. I needed something with a heavier weight at the bottom.
you need something a little heavier. Like I got a ring at the end of mine, right?
Oh, well, Tim, now it's
So-
your turn to stand up.
I'll do it sitting because that way I can keep my arm moist still. See, it's already starting to move. See how it's
Oh my
already going in a
God.
circle? And I'm
It's
just
a
holding still.
USB-A.
Can you see my hand? I can't even see if my
I
hand.
can't see your hand, but I
well,
can
not
see
your
the
hand,
USB.
But yeah.
Okay, if I get my hand lower, can you see it and still the ring? Or no?
I don't see your hand.
Oh, you're good, Tim. I think we're
Yeah,
good.
we're getting it.
All right. But
I
yeah,
love
mean,
science.
yeah, it's something that viewers, you guys can do this at home. You can check it out, test it yourself. You know, see if this is something that works for you. But in any effect, we'll move on from that. But it's a nice little test to test out Chevreul's pendulum experiment. So moving on, Tom Stafford, who's a cognitive scientist who is writing for BBC, explains that what's happening is you're witnessing a movement without owning that movement as being caused by you. So in other words, there's a disconnect between part of your brain making the movement and part of what you're aware what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And on the surface, the explanation seems to make a lot of sense. You know, we all have experienced movements where our bodies seem to act without conscious efforts, like when you're driving a familiar route, suddenly you realize you've been on autopilot for the last 15 minutes, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I'm home already. But here's where scientific explanations start to fall short. So the ideomotor effect might explain why the planchette moves, but it doesn't account for how the board can reveal information that none of the participants could possibly know. It doesn't explain physical manifestations that occur away from the board, and it certainly doesn't explain the consistent patterns of experience reported by Ouija board users across different times, places, and cultures. So, where do you think the scientific explanation falls short? Is there a particular aspect of the Ouija experience that you find most difficult to explain, despite the ideomotor effect?
I mean, for me, like, would be like the after effects, like after playing it, if you do invite something in and don't close it properly. Because yeah, like you could be playing it and someone could be just joking around and moving it, but like that doesn't negate the fact that you're probably like communicating with something.
Yeah.
There's also the idea that like you might be having random like movements, but it's hard to coordinate random movements amongst at least one other person, because I believe like typically you need to have at least one other person to put the two fingers
You're
on.
not supposed to play alone.
Yeah. So like having that, it would be hard to technically coordinate something to make words if, you know, you end up doing that. Though, you know, that then the argument comes in that like, well, if you want it, all of you can start to guess the next word or the next letter. So like that would be the combatant to that rebuttal.
Or like a personal experience I had where no one's touching it and it moves.
Well, that too.
It was Captain Howdy that moved it, man. Please put that down in the comments if you got that reference.
So a psychologist, Daniel Winger, argued in his book, The Illusion of Conscious Will, our normal sense of controlling our actions might itself be a kind of construction, not as straightforward as we typically assume. Perhaps this ambiguity in how we experience agency opens the door to something that's more mysterious and happening with Ouija boards than simple unconscious movements. So even more scientists who study the ideomotor effect acknowledge that there are aspects of the Ouija experience that remain unexplained. The board's ability to spell out coherent messages, often with archaic language or specific details that are unknown to the participants, suggests something more complex may be at work. So while science offers one explanation for the Ouija board's basic mechanism, it leaves many questions unanswered. And it's these unanswered questions that we find the most compelling evidence that Ouija boards might indeed be portals to something beyond our ordinary understanding. So now that we've discussed the history and scientific perspectives of the Ouija boards, let's turn to what make these boards truly fascinating: the experiences people have had with them. So I've collected some of the most compelling accounts from different various sources, as well as my own experiences, and I want to share them with you now. As you listen, I want you guys to ask yourself, can the ideomotor effect really explain this experience? So let's start with what I call the handprint horror. This account comes from a user identified as Catherine H., who shared her experience online. As a skeptical child, Catherine was playing with the Ouija board alongside friends who believed in spirits. To prove her point that the board wasn't real, she kept challenging the board, asking it to do something physical, specifically to tap her on the shoulder. While the planchette never moved in response, suddenly Catherine's back began to sting. When her friend looked, they were horrified to find 3 distinct handprints on her back, red and puffy as if she'd been slapped with a significant force. Catherine, who began the session as a complete skeptic, refused to ever touch a Ouija board again after the experience. What makes this account particularly compelling is that the physical manifestation occurred on part of her body that she couldn't even reach herself, and in a way that would be difficult to fake, especially for a child. So that one's pretty creepy.
Mm-hmm.
The second story comes from Michelle Castillo Fernandez, who shared her brother's friend's experience, so not quite firsthand, but after using a Ouija board in their home, the family began experiencing frightening phenomena, pennies and marbles being thrown down the hallways when no one was there. In one particularly disturbing incident, the mother was doing yard work when she saw what appeared to be a dog. When she called to it, she claimed the dog suddenly had an old man's face.
Yeah.
The activity became so intense and threatening that the family called a priest to perform an emergency exorcism. But here's the chilling part. Even after the exorcism, and to this day, family members report seeing black shadowy figures following them. This suggests that whatever came through the board created a lasting connection that couldn't be easily severed. Sounds like what Maria's concerned about.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's what Maria's afraid of.
And I would be too. That's pretty crazy.
Also, the dog with a man's
That's
face,
terrifying.
I also believe, but it is also a Japanese ghost. There's like a yokai that has that specifically.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, go on, but yeah.
No, that's great. It's good to know that there's a blend between the two, right?
Yeah.
Some type of connection. And the third account comes from a person who was 15 years old when her grandfather asked her to use a Ouija board to contact an uncle who had died at birth. Initially, it seemed like they were communicating with the uncle's spirit, but as the session continued, the entity's personality changed dramatically. It became mean and possessive and finally declared that it had my uncle and it was coming for me. What happened next defies scientific explanation. The user blacked out completely for an entire minute, and when she regained consciousness, the light bulbs in the kitchen had exploded, leaving glass shattered everywhere. Neither she nor her grandmother ever used the Ouija board again. And this case is particularly noteworthy because it involves physical effects at a distance, the exploding light bulbs, that couldn't be caused by unconscious movements of the participants. And then one of the most compelling categories of Ouija board stories involves the board revealing information that none of the participants could have possibly known. Employees at a megaplex had reportedly, it was a haunted movie theater. They decided to use a Ouija board at the theater, and in one specific particular booth that they were told was haunted. They contacted multiple spirits. The board gave them 9 different names, but one of the more malicious entities identified simply as RD. This entity kept telling them to go away and move the planchette in figure 8s, which many paranormal researchers identify as a warning sign of demonic or negative entity. Suddenly, one of the candles they had lit tipped over by itself. The employees reported the strange occurrences continued at the theater until the day they quit. What's notable here is the specific pattern of the figure 8s, a movement reported by many Ouija board users who have no connection to each other and no way of coordinating their experiences. So some of the most convincing Ouija board experiences involve accurate predictions of future events. In the mommy moment, a woman discovered she was pregnant through a Ouija board session with her friends. The board spelled out pregnant, followed by her name, shocking everyone. This was how she first learned about her pregnancy, which was later confirmed medically. Similarly, a 13-year-old girl was asked the board who she would marry, and it responded WTC3. Years later, she met a man who would become her husband, and his initials were WTC, and he was the third person in his family with those initials. The specificity of this prediction, made years before she ever met her future husband, is difficult to attribute as coincidence or the ideomotor effect. Okay, and then there's another story before jumping into my own personal experience, and this one was called The Dad from Beyond. During a Ouija session, one participant whose father died in a trucking accident years earlier began receiving messages related to bridge and water, precisely how her father had passed away. While skeptics might suggest this could be explained by the participant's knowledge of how the father died, what happened next cannot. A hoodie hanging over the back of a chair suddenly flew across the room as if it had been picked up and thrown. All the participants fled, and none would ever use a Ouija board ever again.
Or that hoodie.
Yeah, you probably want to burn that hoodie, right?
Burn it.
Is it how nice is the hoodie?
It's covered in ectoplasm.
Ew. I don't. Are we sure it's ectoplasm? Ew.
Well, what if it's expensive hoodie? Who knows, right?
Yeah, like if it's like a really good hoodie.
It's one of those Huckberry 10-year hoodies, if you guys are familiar with those.
No.
You're like the fashionista there,
Yeah.
Frank. I mean,
Well, hey,
tell me about
they
your,
sell the
like-
hoodie. It's heavyweight, and they say it lasts for 10 years.
dang.
I'll link y'all if you want to see it.
I feel like I've had hoodies that last longer than 10 years.
Yeah, I've got at least 2 or 3 that are 15.
That's wonderful.
Do
And
you?
the difference in price between these hoodies and the hoodie you're talking about, Frank?
I'm sure the one I'm talking about is pretty expensive.
Mm. Do you think I could just put in holy water where it says clothes softener in the washing machine, and that would do something? Or like, do I
It'd be
have
worth a try before throwing it away?
do I have to
hurt.
get like sage and dry it out and put it like the downy smell stuff? Would that be better? Or just all? I guess all, right? Why not?
Yeah, I'll
what's the
get
worst
rid of
that
all of
could
it.
What if you put it on? Do you think it'd throw you across the room?
I don't know. Is the suggestion that it's the father? Right? You said it was about a dad.
Yeah, it was about the dad. The dad crashed, and it gave those clues like water and bridge, but I don't know why it would throw a hoodie across the room either.
Maybe
if it
he was
the
like,
dad.
pick up your room. Like, this isn't belong.
Yeah, why is there a hoodie here? Clean your shit up.
Clean your shit up. Like,
That's
I don't
probably
think
what I
my
was thinking.
dad would throw me.
Yeah.
Would my dad?
But-
no.
But I mean, how many stories have we already heard where it's probably not the person they were talking to, right?
Mm.
They thought they were talking to like the lady thought she was talking to her uncle, and it turned out to probably be something demonic because of the figure eights. So, you know, you can't
that's
for sure
unsettling.
say it was the dad. It could have been something with, you know, more malicious intent that's throwing your hoodie across the room.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like that's the case for most of the people that play it and get responses. Like they think it's a family member, but in reality, it's just something pretending to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of it, right?
Mm.
So with that, I think I'll dive into my personal story. So when I was in my early 20s, I was experimenting with the Ouija board with a couple other folks. We were in the living room and we had sat down on the floor, pulled out the Ouija board and started asking some questions. We asked if it'd like to talk to us. It was quiet for a bit. And this is actually like my first time ever playing with a Ouija board. We finally received a response, and it didn't seem to be able to spell very well.
You told us this story, I think.
Yeah, I've told you this story before. Yeah,
This is what you told us in the holiday show. So,
yeah. So people might have already
Yeah.
heard this story.
all right.
That's
I'm just
okay.
making sure because
And I think I told you the story on my interview too.
Mhm.
You know, because it is what really got me into believing and kind of on this trajectory. But we were playing with it and couldn't spell properly, so we asked us its age, and I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was a young number. And when we asked, you know, whoever, whatever it was that we were communicating with, what its name was, it came back with Jason. And that gave me chills immediately because years prior to that, my only son at the time told me he was talking to his friend Jason when I heard him like what sounded to be speaking in tongues in the hallway. And I was like, who are you talking to? And he was like, Jason. I was like, oh, cute. This kid's got an imaginary friend, whatever, right? And then when it popped up on the Ouija board, it was like, all right, now I'm a little, you know, freaked out about this. Talked to it a little bit longer, and it was just tough to communicate with him because he was so young and hard to spell. And we decided to go, you know, out to kind of the hills to go chat. Went out to the hills, started chatting, came back and it said, fuck off, we're in a meeting. I was like, okay, spirits are in a meeting, whatever. And we go out to the old Idaho City Cemetery, which is a very old cemetery that has a lot of people in it that are buried that they don't know who they are or what they died from because it's so old and there were so many. And we get to the beginning of the entrance of the cemetery and we hop out and grab the Ouija board and get it set up and get ready to talk to it. And we just hear something running through the bushes at us. Sounded like if a bear was running at you, but typically, you know, if it's an animal, they run the other way when they get spooked, not towards you. And so we hopped in the car and just took off, booked it all the way back home. And we drove out there. It was like an hour drive. And we got home, sat back down on the living room floor and we're chatting. The first thing we asked was, you know, what was chasing us? And it spelled out death. And then we heard this loud boom upstairs. And it was like, it sounded like we had one of these double like filing cabinets. And I thought maybe that thing just fell over, right? Because like, this is weird, coincident, crazy, go upstairs, nothing's out of order. You know, just this loud boom. So we just got freaked out. We went outside, you know,
Wow.
we had like a farmhouse. We just lit the thing on fire and then threw it in the ditch to float away on fire. But yeah, that was an experience that I had. And then years later, the crazy part about that is I did have like a medium, a lady who did ghost tours down in Tucson, come to the home. And I gave her no details about what had happened in the past. And she actually brought the spirit rods like Joan was talking about the water sticks. She brought the spirit rods in. I didn't tell her anything. She came through and she's like going through like the house. Oh, it was the upstairs and add-on, this, that, the other. She's like, there's 2 spirits here. One's named Hattie. One's named Jason. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the 3rd time now I've heard this name. And something that I'm completely not associated with because I didn't tell her anything about this. And so it just kind of confirmed, how I felt about it even more. And one of the main reasons why I'm a 10 right now, right?
I would be a 10 also at that point, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously I played more and I've had other experiences that continue to keep me at a 10. But that one was the main one that it was hard for me after that to be like, yeah, there's really no denying this at this point for me. So, Frank said if he had, if that happened to him, he'd be a 10. If you were approaching these stories as a skeptical investigator, what alternative explanations might you be able to consider for all of these experiences, including mine?
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of people within the paranormal community that will actually embellish stories in order to either turn a profit or maybe make their otherwise mundane lives a bit more interesting. Like, I know you don't have anything that you're trying to gain by telling us these personal stories, so I don't believe that of you. However, I do think that there are people out there that will spin a yarn and embellish an experience in order to have some type of gain, whether it's notoriety, as in, the Fox sisters, or like a profit in the same parallel. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing to consider is like we live in a day and age where like attention is commerce. So like some of these stories, like you see it on TikTok, by the way, hi on TikTok, all the time, where like people make up these like ghost stories or stories in general just to get people's attention for a while. There's also the idea that like more than one coincidence can happen at a time, and it might seem like the easiest answer would be to like lump them all together, but like two things can be true at once, kind of ideal. And like for the example of Tim, not to say that I don't believe what happened, because I do, but like Jason's a common name, so why wouldn't it come up? I was actually going to make the joke that Jason was haunting me at my wedding because the officiant called my husband Jason 3 times, and that's not his name, so Jason was also there. But yeah, just that idea that like sometimes things just happen, and they the idea that like, especially when you're doing something like a Ouija board, you've kind of prepped yourself already, so you're already on edge, so you're more likely to see these small coincidences and then chuck them to like that answer. That being said, I do believe that some of these stories are true, just like how many, and I think that's why like I settled on a 5, because I think like 50% of the time like that's real, and like 50% of the other times like it's not that real.
50% of the time, 100% of the time it's fake.
Yeah. No, it's 60% of the time it works 100% of the time.
Right. So, but I mean, I guess the argument there would be that even if 50% of the time the stories are true, then the device does work in that aspect. It's just some people either lie about it or embellish or don't have an experience.
I've got a question for you, Tim. And this is a question about your personal story. So you said that you took the Ouija board to a graveyard. Did you do that with the intention of it being able to talk to more spirits, or for it to scale upward in its sensitivity towards the afterlife?
I was so young, man. I was like 21, 22 years old.
You were just like, it'd be fun to do this in the
cemetery. I was just like, man, that was cool that we talked to some kid at the house. And I was disappointed we couldn't talk to somebody in the woods. I was like, we go somewhere where there's a bunch of death and suffering. And
so that's a yes then. You did it for the...
I thought that we'd get more activity for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
I didn't at the time really think that there would be the possibility of something negative coming from it until we heard something running at us and got back to the house and it said death was coming for us, right? Mm-hmm. And at that point, when I kind of pulled back a bit and said, maybe we shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. But then continue to do it more later, right? I mean, I probably took a year or two off from that after that, just because.
I would take forever off after that if that actually happened. To be honest.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the other experience that sometimes I played with it and I've got nothing from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I've had communication every time either. You know, I've only had maybe 3, you know, that experience and 2 others where it was so obviously crazy to me. You know, I had another one where it was like none of us even had our hands on it. And the thing was moving, talking to us. And then another one where we couldn't get someone to. We were with somebody who'd never played with it and didn't really believe and was skeptical, and you know, and decided, hey, let's try to summon Zozo, which was a no.
Is that the name of the demon?
Yeah, it's the one you're not supposed to summon on a Ouija board.
Well, I mean, I think the rule is you shouldn't really say their name anyway, right?
Well, especially when you're doing figure 8s on your own.
Yeah, I think that
right?
Okay. That specific one is connected to the figure 8 occurrence. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. At that point, the person who I was with ended up, I think, being possessed because she was definitely not herself. Broke her phone, threw her dog, and grabbed a knife to cut my eyes out with. So it was a very odd experience. And honestly, I have not played with one since then. So
What happened to her?
Where's she
Out of
currently?
I mean, she's okay now. You know, that night it was a very rough night. I got the knives away and just kind of.
How do you sleep when, like, yeah, you took away the knives, but where do you put them where you're not going to throw them away?
You have duct tape in your house.
Yeah.
You duct tape the knives together?
No, you duct tape their hands together
Oh.
and their feet, and you put them to bed.
Oh my God, Tim.
And then you
I
start
thought you were going to
praying.
talk about duct taping all those knives into one super knife, but you went in a totally different direction.
No. I mean, I was looking out for the person, right? So, I mean, you know, fortunately they came to and was like, wow, didn't even remember any of that stuff that had happened.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. That's wild.
And I think anybody would think that somebody like that, like, this can't be real. At the time, I was like, there's no way this is real, right? I mean, but when somebody takes something that they love, like their pet, and throws it and like slams their phone so hard that it breaks, you're just kind of like, okay, they're not faking this because I know they ain't got the money to replace that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was a scary night.
Yeah.
And Tim, did you like experience anything like after burning the board? Because like I've heard like you shouldn't burn them.
I didn't. You know, I've heard stories about that too, where like it comes back or does this, that, the other, or anything bad happened to me. But no, nothing bad happened. And I didn't see anything crazy after I burnt it and set it away.
Yep.
Yeah.
I heard that you can't get them wet or they don't work anymore. That's what I've heard.
Oh.
So you're supposed to like get it in like a lake or something if you want to get rid of it. I've also heard to like close it out, you got to flip the board upside down so that it's not opening, like it's not facing open. And that's actually funny. I have a blanket behind me and it has pieces of the Ouija board, but I refuse to get anything with a full Ouija board because people are like, well, it's a window and you don't want a window just open in your house. So that's where I'm like, I don't want to invite things in. So, but like, I think you're okay if you don't have it completely done. It's like a very weird window in my house.
See, that's another thing I haven't done that I've thought about doing before, because they do say too that if spirits are around and you look through the planchet, you know, the eye, that you'd be able to see things too. But I've never really cared to see anything demonic, just whatever.
No.
If it's there, it's there. I just don't want to see it. It might scare me.
That's how I feel about a lot of things.
If I see something I can't beat up, I'll be a little concerned, right?
I mean, I don't know how you would beat up like a spirit, supernatural force. Tim,
That's
I
what
don't know
he's
if physical
saying.
strength plays into it.
It's literally called shadow boxing,
But
but
if it
that's
looks
fine.
like a person, if it looks like a person, I'll feel better about it, right? But if it looks like some crazy monster demon thing,
Theoretically, Tim, if something were to jump out at you, what's going to be your first course of action? Are you going to like pray? Are you going to try to fight it for real? Are you going to try to like throw holy water? What's your play there?
I think natural reactions, I'm going to try to fight it for real. But
Okay.
if nothing, if I can't, if like I take a swing and nothing goes right through it or something, then just probably run and start praying.
run and pray at the same time.
Yeah.
Full speed running, but praying.
Yeah.
And
Out loud or to yourself?
I don't know if
praying?
you know me, Frank. Full speed is not very fast.
I've got
More
good
like walking and
acceleration, but
praying. More like walking
my
and
max
praying.
speed is not very good.
Are demons
That's why.
good?
That's why fighting is my first instinct. I think I'd have a better chance of that than running.
Are demons good at cardio?
Well, they're floating. They float. They
You
don't
sure
touch
know
the
why.
Do
ground.
they float,
Or they
Frank?
could teleport. I don't know.
I think so. Put down in the comments whether you think demons float or not.
Yeah. I don't know.
What if they just wear rollerblades and it just looks like they're floating?
I like
What if
that
they're-
idea. That they're
What
just
if they're wearing those Heelys shoes?
Oh
God.
my
yeah,
God.
Heelys, yeah.
Demons on Heelys.
Some of them have razor scooters so they can hit you in the ankle when you're running
Oh,
away.
God, it's a shattered ankle.
Oh,
See, that's probably the way to do it. See, when I did this stuff, we didn't have all this fancy stuff like the scooters and stuff. Now you probably just have like one of those electric scooters that we can get away as fast as you want.
yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of those.
I got a friend I see like every morning at like 6 o'clock. He's on his way to work and he's on one of those things. He goes like 90 down the road in that. Like, I can't believe.
Good Lord,
Like,
90?
yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't believe he survived, but he does.
I don't know about
every day.
90, but
It's
the
not,
reason-
I'm exaggerating, but he goes to top speed on the thing. He's faster than most of the cars.
Maybe he
The
is
reason
running
I
away
really
from a
don't like
demon
them-
every morning, guys.
Right.
when I'm driving through the streets of Chicago, you can rent electric bikes all around the city through
Mhm.
the Lime bike. It's like, that's the brand. And like, for some reason, like for Illinois at least, you should regard any kind of anything that you ride on that has a motor needs to go in the street. You do not count as a pedestrian. It does not count as a bicycle. But these people on the scooters will go into the bike lane, and they are neither bicyclists nor motorists, but they just, none of the laws apply to them when they're on their scooter. So like, you'll be like trying to go through an intersection, and if you're not careful, they're literally not looking either. People,
oh, no.
times are so rough that people would like don't even care if they get hit. So I can't tell you how many times that like, even me personally, I've almost hit people making zero mistake, but somebody's just zooming by on their scooter with like, ear pods or whatever. They really just don't care. So I'm not a fan of scooters that are like electric like that.
Well, like, I don't mean to speak for you, Maria, because this is closer to where you are, but like, I heard that like Denver had to stop their city bikes for a little bit because a lot of people were drunk on them. Was the big problem.
Maybe. I haven't heard anything about that, but yeah, I see a lot of them around here. So
Yeah.
Remind me to tell you guys a personal story that's irrelevant to this after the show.
Okay.
It's another reason I don't like the bike, like the city bike rental.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Mhm.
Well, these stories represent just a small sample of thousands of Ouija board experiences reported around the world. While any single account might be dismissed as an exaggeration or misinterpretation, the sheer volume of similar reports, often from people with no connection to each other and no prior belief in the paranormal, suggests something more profound may be occurring when people use these boards. The consistent patterns across these experiences, physical manifestations, accurate predictions, knowledge beyond the participant's awareness, and lasting effects long after the board is put away, point to something beyond simple unconscious movements. These patterns form a part of the evidence supporting the idea that the Ouija board may indeed function as a portal to another realm. Some of the stories that we've just explored are compelling, but they're just the beginning. So let's examine the broader evidence that suggests Ouija boards might truly function as portals to another realm. While skeptics dismiss these boards as mere parlor tricks, there are several categories of evidence that challenge these simplistic views. So let's consider the phenomena of participants receiving information they couldn't possibly know. This happens with remarkable consistency across Ouija board sessions worldwide. In many documented cases, boards have revealed specific details about deceased individuals, names, dates, causes of death, and personal messages that were later verified as accurate, even though none of the participants had knowledge of these facts. So, for example, in a case documented by paranormal researcher Dr. Raymond Moody, a group using a Ouija board contacted what appeared to be the spirit of a young man who had died in a motorcycle accident. The spirit provided his full name, the exact location of the accident, and details about a medallion he was wearing when he died. The participants had no connection to this individual, yet when they researched the information later, every detail checked out. The ideomotor effect simply cannot account for this kind of specific, verifiable information coming through the board. Second, we have physical manifestations that occur during or after Ouija sessions. As we heard in the stories earlier, these can include objects moving at a distance from the board, lights flickering or bulbs exploding, temperature drops, and even physical marks appearing on participants' bodies. These phenomena occur well beyond the reach of the participants' hands on the planchette and cannot be explained by unconscious movements. The consistency of these physical manifestations across different sessions conducted by different people in different locations suggests a pattern that transcends coincidence. When multiple unconnected individuals report similar physical phenomena, like the recurring motif of objects being thrown across rooms, we must consider that something genuine and measurable is occurring. Third, there is a matter of predictive capabilities. Ouija boards have repeatedly demonstrated an uncanny ability to predict future events with specific details that later come to pass. From pregnancies to marriages to deaths, these predictions often include precise information that couldn't be guessed or inferred. The statistical likelihood of these specific predictions being repeatedly accurate by chance is vanishingly small. In one well-documented case from the 1980s, a Ouija board predicted a major earthquake would strike a specific region of California on a particular date. The participants who recorded this prediction were shocked when an earthquake matched the description occurred exactly as predicted. Such cases challenge us to consider that something beyond random chance or subconscious knowledge is at work. Fourth, we should consider the cross-cultural consistency of spirit communication. Throughout human history and across diverse cultures, people have developed methods for communicating with the dead or with spiritual entities. From ancient Chinese Fuji, planchette writing, to European table tipping to African spirit boards, these practices share remarkable similarities despite developing independently. The cross-cultural consistency suggests that these various methods may be tapping into a genuine phenomenon, that the barrier between our world and the spirit realm can indeed be bridged by those certain practices and tools. The Ouija board represents just one manifestation of the universal human experience of spirit communication. There is also the matter of linguistic anomalies. Many Ouija board sessions produce communications in archaic language, foreign tongues, or specialized vocabulary that the participants themselves don't possess. In some cases, boards have spelled out messages in dead languages or used technical terminology specific to certain professions or historical periods. Unless we're prepared to argue that the subconscious mind somehow has access to languages and knowledge we've never learned, these linguistic anomalies present a significant challenge to purely psychological explanations. And then finally, we should consider the transformative impact these experiences have had on believers and skeptics alike. Many people who begin Ouija sessions as complete skeptics, convinced the board is nothing but a game, emerge as believers after experiencing phenomenon they can't explain. This pattern of conversion, especially among those who were initially determined to debunk the board's powers, suggests there's something genuinely compelling about these experiences that transcends suggestion or wishful thinking. What is everyone's thoughts on those?
I think it's pretty well thought out, but I think I maintain my 1.5 to 2 as a believer. Like, for me personally, if some of those things actually happened to me, I would be a believer. But because they haven't, and I can't judge my own beliefs on somebody else's experiences or second or third hand accounts, unfortunately, it won't change how I feel about the whole thing.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that.
Yeah, I'm more or less in the same boat there too.
Man, I really want us to all get together.
Yeah, we should. This should be like the first thing we do.
Yeah, dude, we should have done it yesterday. We're all meeting up at the Denver airport. I know that. I don't know when.
When you do a Ouija board in the Denver airport?
Ooh.
Oh my God, that would
Probably
be so
could.
nice.
By the talking gargoyles.
Wonder if we get kicked out.
Probably not.
We probably would, because they'd be like, please don't do that.
Maybe we should go to the Vegas airport. I think Vegas would be more accepting of that.
I'll dress up as Lucifer. It'll be great.
Say Lucifer?
Lucifer.
Yeah, that's the name of the
statue.
horse.
You're
Oh yeah. Forgot
Killed
about
its
that.
killed its owner, maker.
Well, Are you gonna get like one of those like inflatable horse costumes? What are you talking about? You
Well,
can
I
get,
actually didn't have a plan, Joan. It was a joke, but I guess that would be the method.
No.
Inflatable or bust.
No. You said
Or,
it. Now I
hey,
need
listen,
it explained to me.
If we're talking serious, I'm gonna get one of those horse costumes where one person's the front of the horse and one person's the butt. I was kind of hoping that Colin would be the butt of the horse, but he is
I'll be the
taller, so
butt.
it makes more sense if he's the front since he's taller.
It'll just be a really long horse.
The eyes need to be glowing red.
Yeah. What if he farts though, Colin? That's how you get pink eye.
Well, I think that's just a risk I'm going to have to take.
Wear your glasses, maybe. Anyway.
Yeah, I got a face shield.
You got to put goggles on in there.
Yeah.
Why do you put goggles on to go in the costume?
He's stinky.
Well, as we wrap up, I want to invite our listeners to reflect on their own beliefs and experiences. Perhaps you've used a Ouija board yourself and you've encountered something inexplicable. I'd love for you to put that in the comment section, and maybe you're still skeptical, but you're curious and you'd like to know more information. You'd like for us to do follow-up topics on this, please leave that in the comments as well. Either way, wherever you stand, I hope this episode has given you a deeper appreciation for this mysterious board that continues to captivate our imagination for more than 130 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on. Guys, want to move on to final thoughts?
I think Joan's going to give us some announcements first, but then we'll
Yeah.
go announcements after.
Before we head into final thoughts, first off, thank you to everyone who has checked out our show from last week with our special guest, Maybe It's Spiritual. If you have not checked that out, totally fine, because you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts, or if you want to see our pretty faces, you can go over to YouTube and watch it there. And then, just give a shout out in the comments, thanking our guest for coming on. That was very nice of them. Just so you know what's coming up for this next month, we have a couple of things. One is Mel's Hole next week. That's a Charlie's topic. I'm going to do unicorns. There might be a murder mystery happening. Who knows? Maybe you should come. Specifically, that one's great for the live chat because you can help us try to solve the murder mystery. And maybe we won't all end up dead like last time, but maybe we will. And I didn't know Colin was actually doing a topic about Frank in the horse costume because it says Old Stinker on the on the list. So topical. So yeah.
Up until that show, only my wife is allowed to call me that. But after we do that show, then it opens up everybody's ability to use that nickname on me.
Ooh, that's so fun for us. So I believe that is it for our announcements, unless Frank can think of anything else he wants me to say.
Nope, not really. Just, please tell us in the comments what you'd like us to cover, because I feel like some of our best ideas come from those comments.
Yeah.
And I guess we can move into final thoughts. Who wants to get us started?
I'll go.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't really necessarily believe in the Ouija board, but I think it's definitely a cool tool to get into spirituality and to try to experiment with it and see if you feel anything and see if you if you do believe into it or believe in it, it's a cool, it's effectively a gateway drug, I guess. That's where I'm going at. But it seems pretty cool, and I like hearing all the stories about it and the different experiences people have had with it.
I guess that I would be willing to try it if I was with a group of people that I trusted and know that they were taking it seriously, at least for part of it. Following the rules and stuff, and definitely do a cleansing after on myself or something, because I don't want no bad juju. But yeah, it's really interesting, and there's so many stories out there that this topic could go on forever. So yeah.
My final thoughts is Tim, I'm very surprised you didn't watch that video. Maybe I didn't send it to everybody. There's a video that goes around where it's people misspelling Ouija board. And it's one of our favorites to quote here, but one of the greatest questions that's asked in that, and I don't feel like it was answered, I'm sorry, Tim, was, can I get from witch or vegan? So you need to, Can I get Ouija board from Witcher Vegan?
What?
I think that's a reference that Charlie would give, but nobody else would.
Oh my God, I have to play that for you. But yeah, there's a video that it's just people asking like Yahoo questions and they keep spelling Ouija board wrong. It's the same people who do the Pregante video as well. But anyway, that being said, I think that it's still a portal. Excuse me. But I think that there was a podcast back in the day that said it best, that Ouija boards are like cars. If you know how to drive them, they're safe. But if you don't, they're dangerous. So just protect yourself. Even if you're being silly about it, just do a little cleansing, blot out that third eye if you need to.
Don't play alone.
But don't play alone.
Yeah.
Always say goodbye.
Yeah, always say goodbye. Flip it over if you need to. I also heard, and maybe we'll do an episode 2 about just superstitions surrounding the Ouija board itself, such as like, I was told like, it's better if you're a virgin, or like it's better to play it close to a woman's menstrual cycle and things like that. There's so much lore behind like young
proximity or time frame.
Both. Like women on their periods, or like girls becoming women, when, or whatever you want to call it, that when they get their periods.
There is a line of thinking where some people believe that women who are menstruating would see more paranormal things. And they mention it in Ghostbusters. In the original Ghostbusters movie, when Venkman and Stantz and Egon go to investigate the library ghost, they ask the librarian if she's menstruating. And when they ask Peter Venkman, why do you want to know? And he's like, I'm a scientist. But it's because that it is or was a belief that you can be more sensitive to that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of belief around women's menstruation in just like Christianity as well. Like there are some Orthodox forms of Christianity where like a woman should not be going to church when she's on her period because she's seen as dirty. We don't have to get into that, but there's like a whole bunch of spiritual beliefs about just periods in general, but also like the Warrens kind of like made it a big deal to be like, oh, young girls coming of age manifest these spirits. And that was that whole like, was it the Westfield, the one in England? They're like, oh, because they're coming of age, they're the ones causing the ghosts and things like that. So yeah, it's an interesting portal, and if anything, I think it can be seen as like a microphone. So sometimes ghosts could step up to it, and sometimes maybe ghosties don't step up to it, and you're just making weird sounds into the microphone yourself. But who knows?
I do that every podcast.
I know.
Yeah.
Tim, what's your final thought?
My final thought, it was fun subject to cover, especially because it's something that I already believed in and was close to me. So it was nice to look at both sides of it and review the scientific pieces and what the skeptics say, to see it from both sides. So that was fun. I think it's fun to kind of test that and hear the other stories and see, have that debate, even if it wasn't, with us as a crew, just going through that as I went through my research in the process to see, hey, they say this, but then there's this, it seems like there's always a rebuttal, regardless of which side you're on. And I love that about, this topic. I love that about a lot of topics. So it's just fun to get both sides and get just more informed in everything.
Lovely. My final thought, please put down your Ouija board experiences in the comments. Our favorite comment is going to win a large carpet that has the Ouija board printed on it, and a Roomba, and then a planchette that you could put on top of the Roomba. So when you're not home, you can come home to something that it has summoned.
Automated Ouija.
Automated Ouija, everybody. We'll put ChatGPT onto that Roomba. All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for telling a friend. Thanks for kissing your mom with the Ouija board if she's already passed on. And we'll see y'all next week. Hope you have a wonderful night. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you guys.